Paid for by Save Juneau, P.O. Box 32142 Juneau, Alaska 99803 Molly Duval Chair. Top contributors Wayne Coogan, James Wilcox, and Robert Jacobson.
Hello everyone, it is Alex and this is Did You Know Juneau? Today I have Paul Kelly with me and you are running for an Assembly area-wide seat?
Correct.
Perfect, area-wide seat. And we are going to get in it because we're going to have Paul tell us a little about yourself and what qualifies you to represent us on the Assembly.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alex. My name's Paul. I'm a lifelong Alaskan. I grew up in Anchorage. I came down to Juneau initially just for work. I was working as a legislative aide. And Juneau just felt like home to me. And I at the end of the session, I looked for work here and ended up trying to just making the move permanent. I'd say that's one of the two best decisions I've made in my life, besides proposing to my fiance last year.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. And kind of getting on to what qualifies me, I've always tried to be very, very active. I was active in my undergrad community, of course, when I was going to college. But since coming to Juneau, I served 3 years on the Board of Education. 2 of those years were as on the board's leadership. I currently serve. I've served for about 5 years or so on my union Juneau chapter's executive board, and the last 2 years I've served as the president.
Okay.
If elected to the Assembly, my top 3 priorities are going to be supporting public education, reducing homelessness, and helping to grow our economy and diversify our tourism industry.
Getting into the questions, we all love living in Juneau, as you have just said, but it's expensive. Save Juneau is very concerned about the cost of living. What is one idea the Assembly could implement to lower Juneau's cost of living?
Well, that's a great question, and I can probably tie back to one of the times when I was out knocking doors. I talked to this lady, we had a great conversation, and towards the end she said that she was going to vote for me. I'm like, oh, this is great. But then she qualified that answer was with, if I'm still living here. And the reason I would be living here still is because my son can't find an affordable place to live. Mm-hmm. And so I think one thing that the Assembly can do, I think, is to open up more land to development. Try and reduce the property, the drastic inflation that we're seeing in our property values by opening up land, not just for housing, but to open it up for actually smartly built communities where people can walk around. You can get to the grocery store at a 15-minute walk. You can go to the doctor, 15-minute walk. Easy access to public transportation. So that, I think having some affordable or middle-income housing, maybe out in North Douglas. That could really open up some cost savings for people, especially if they're also saving money on gas because they don't have to drive around everywhere.
Yeah, right. Great. Thanks so much for that. All right. At both the state and city level, as well as the private sector, there are tons of vacant open positions in Juneau's workforce. Why can't Juneau attract more people to live and work here, in your opinion?
Oh, of course, yeah. That's what this is all kind of about. It's not easy for a middle income young couple to that's hoping to start a family here in Juneau, mm-hmm. whether they're coming here or whether they've always lived in Juneau. As we just discussed, housing is too expensive. For a young family, especially childcare, either you can't find it or it's not affordable. In one of my chapter meetings as the AFSCME Local 52 president, we had somebody last year who was telling us, well, I just lost my childcare, so I don't have a place to take my kid. I am probably going to, unless we can find a solution, I'm probably going to need to leave state service. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think the Assembly needs to take another look at supporting childcare. I know they got some initiatives going, and I know we have some partners, especially with the AEYC. But I think there's also certain things that the city and our businesses can do. On-site childcare, for example, because the licensing requirements are much less strict. It's much easier to get a daycare provider. If a business has the space And I think the city, where it can, especially in any new facility that it makes, it should try and look at the possibility of having a space for on-site childcare there. And then, of course, I think it's also important, it's to continue supporting our Rally program for the older school-age children.
Okay, perfect. So we're gonna roll into actually being an assembly member and ask, how do you see the roles of the assembly member and the city manager, which is hired by the assembly?
Right. And I can kind of relate to this because I used to serve on the school board, and it's a similar relationship. You have the school board and you have the superintendent, and it's pretty much kind of a mirror of the exact same situation. And my perspective on this is that we are, first and foremost, we are public servants, but then we are also charged to take on leadership. And to me, leadership means, and I think I'm going to use the language of somebody else whose door I knocked on. He said that he really wished that school board members and assembly members would really get down in the muck and find out what's happening. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of my perspective, serving on the school board. I think leadership is about looking in depth. I would go into tour schools, talk to teachers. There's one time Thunder Mountain High School, they invited school board members to come shadow students. And I think it's that kind of outreach that is important for good leadership. Mm-hmm. And then it's also, I think, important to be have a sort of trusting relationship. So transparency is very important, but you're charged with making these decisions, and some of them might come from public testimony, some of them might come from some of it. What your decisions are coming from. The research that you've done yourself, and so you need to have that trusting relationship with the public, so that way you can explain your decisions, especially if they might be unpopular.
Oh, okay. It's so funny you just said that, because the next question is talking about that knowledge and public opinion. Kind of to almost reiterate a little bit of what you just talked about, but we'll hone in on it. How would your decision be affected by public opinion, testimony in person or email, versus using your knowledge and judgment you have gained on issues?
Right. And to me, I don't see that as an either or. It's not one versus the other. It's all kind of a conglomerate. We're, as elected officials, as elected leaders, we're charged with making these decisions. We spend hours in committees studying the issues. We get packets, and then I myself personally, and I'm sure other elected leaders do this as well. Do our own homework and go out and talk to people. And so, because we're doing all that, I think that knowledge and judgment should be a major part of it. But then you also, what's super important in making any sort of decision is getting stakeholder input, and that's so public testimony, because this affects us all. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's things that you might not have considered, and so I think it's really a combination of both listening to the people, to getting their input, using their input, but then also using all of that time and energy you spent in researching the issues and using your best judgment. It's a combination.
Perfect. All right, we're going to move on to the one ballot measure, or I called it the bond issue. And here we go. Do you support public servants promoting the city hall with public money? Do you have alternative options to solving the ill-managed public building we have today?
So promoting, no, but providing information like a cost-benefit analysis or offering tours of the existing building, yes, I would support funding to do that. My understanding of the state election regulations is that in order for city staff to put information up on the website or to give those tours, it requires that money be allocated specifically for that purpose. So I wouldn't support a full-blown campaign with mailers and radio ads and social media advertising like somebody running for office. But yeah, I would support getting the information out there, which is what I think we need. I believe there are alternatives, and I believe the Assembly should have explored them. When the voters made their decision last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I believe that decision should have been respected. The Assembly should have looked at all the alternatives, and if it wanted to come back to this one, it should have presented this as an alternative. Like, here's how much it's going to cost us if we do this. Here's how much it's going to cost us if we do that, and here's how much we might save by moving into a consolidated city hall. And because this was such a hot button topic and people were talking about it at the door kind of early on when I was May and June knocking on doors, I decided to take a tour. I was probably I think I was the first person to take a tour. I reached out to Katie Kester, and she. I have pictures of on my phone of plastic sheets hanging from the ceilings to keep out rainwater. The urinal in one of the men's bathrooms is completely boxed off because they can't repair it, because that would require asbestos abatement work getting into the plumbing. And it's the same kind of issue with trying to make basic repairs to the carpet. They have carpet that's patched up and blocking, making it hard to open and close doors because it would require millions of dollars in order to fix it. Not to mention, we're renting 4 different buildings. So if you show up at City Hall, you don't know where your next stop is going to be. I mean, it would be a lot simpler, I think, if we could just go to one place to get done what we need to get done. And so, like all this that we're spending, to me, it represents the definition of government inefficiency. And so, while I don't care for the process that the Assembly went about in approving this, I plan to vote for it.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we're going to actually roll into now the property taxes that have also been a hot button topic. Some 400 homeowners appealed their property assessment this year. Talk to us about property taxes and where you stand with the property taxes.
Sure. So I have, I'm not sure if it's a privilege or a burden of being one of the few candidates in my race who actually owns a home and does pay property taxes on that home. My experience, I bought my first home during COVID, actually, with the super low interest rates. I bought my condo in West Juneau. And 2 years later, when I moved in with my fiance, I sold that for a $20,000 profit. So I gained $20,000 in equity over the course of 2 years, and to me that represents that. And I've checked on this with other experts. Property inflation has drastically increased when compared to inflation on everything else. And so kind of keeping that in mind, I looked at the city's budget this year. 32% of the city's revenue is coming from property taxes. What I kind of propose is maybe a new process that we go about doing this. Instead of, we have a mill rate that mill rate times the assessed value. But I think maybe we can have a starting point, like what out of that 32% that we're going to get in our tax revenue, what is the most we're going to charge, and is that kind of consistent or set within some sort of margin, some sort of range of inflation, and then from there we want to look at funding our basic city services, especially our first responders and everything else that's important to have in a community. We need to then put in investments in our community like education and infrastructure, especially if we want to expand to more housing, and basically we want to build a budget that builds Juneau.
Yeah, right, exactly. All right. I actually call this the ambiguous question. But if you could make on a promise to the voters that you swear not to break, what would it be?
Well, I would promise to represent all of the voters of Juneau, regardless of whether or not they voted for me.
Okay. Awesome. Do you have any final statements for us that you would like to offer?
Sure. From the beginning, my campaign has all been about listening to people, about public outreach. To date, I've knocked on more than 1,500 doors.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've reached out to different to different parts of the community. I did a ride along with our police officers to get the perspective of our first responders. I spoke to the chair of the Juneau Commission on Aging, because to me, I'm going to be a senior someday, so I want to know what we can do to support our seniors. And I had an interest in developing in North Douglas and in the second crossing, so I reached out to a member of the North Douglas Homeowners Association. So I see that sort of trend is not going to stop after I get elected. I am going to continue reaching out to the community and doing my homework and doing what is best for Juneau.
Okay guys, so Paul Kelly, area-wide assembly seat candidate here, and remember that your ballot will go out on September 14th. Probably see it in your mailbox September 16th-ish. But vote often. If you are uncomfortable dropping your mail-in ballot in the mail, there are in-person locations in your district. Go ahead and look those up, find out where they are. Also, if you want to make sure to certify your mail-in ballot, do that as well. The point is, no excuse not to vote. So let's have ourselves be great Juneau citizens and vote, vote, vote. Thanks so much.
And pick Paul on or before October 3rd.
There you go.